So a radical equation is an equation with a variable under a radical. So your x is underneath your square root. All right, Lance, let's try this one more time. I think we're out. All right, an extraneous solution, extraneous, is an answer that does not satisfy the original equation. So we're going to get some extraneous solutions. Because how do you get rid of a square root? What is the kryptonite for square root? Square it. Richard, at Shoulders, Knees, and Toes, please. Do you need an extra packet? So the opposite of square root is squaring. The bad part about squaring is when you square something, it takes away the negative, and then that messes up the equation a little bit. So when we answer these questions, we have to plug the answer back in and see if it's really a solution. So if I'm solving alrighty, so we want to get the square root all by itself. So when we look at this equation here, how am I going to get the square root all by itself? We are on Gavin. Okay, so what's the opposite of plus 7? Minus 7. So we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. Peyton, give me a thumbs up when you have this written down. All right, and then Alex, what is the opposite of square root? Yeah. So we're going to get rid of this square root, we're going to square both sides. And then Zoe, what is 9 squared? 900. So our proposed answer is 81. We need to plug it back in so we can test it. So where the x is here, we're going to put an 81. All right, and then so who gets the next bingo challenge? Who's row? Peyton's row. All right, Peyton, what's the square root of 81? 9. Rudy, what is 9 plus 7?
Is it 16?
16. And we're checking. Laura, I'm just going to scoot you in with their row. Is 16 equal to 16? So we are checking our answer. All right. So Laura, whose row gets to go next? Leslie. Okay, Leslie. We have root x minus 5 equals negative 2. How are we going to get the square root of x by itself? Add the 5. All right, John, when I add 5 to negative 2, what do I get? We get positive 3. And John, whose row gets the bingo next? Evan, okay. Brandon, how am I going to get x by itself without a square root? We squared it. Awesome. And x is equal to 9. Okay, we need to plug that back in. Okay, so Rachel, what is the square root of 9? 3. 7. What is 3 minus 5? -2. And does -2 equal -2 since Connor's not here? Yeah. So this checks out. Just a little pause. All right, let's look at the next problem together. All right. The time it takes the pendulum of a clock to complete a full swing is approximated by the equation. T equals 2 times the square root of L divided by 3.3, where L is the length of the pendulum in feet. The pendulum completes a full swing in 3 seconds, so T is equal to 3. How long is the pendulum to the nearest foot? Jake, do you think you can rewrite this problem, but instead of a T, put in a 3? Think you can do that? Okay, yeah. Please come over and do that. So we're going to rewrite this formula. Instead of a T, there's going to be a 3. So the 2 and the big square root and the L and the 3.3 get to stay. Do not confuse the L with a 1. It's an L. Thank you. All right, Rob. How do we get rid of, because we can't get rid of what's inside this square root. We can't just start taking pieces away from it because it's trapped in that square root prism. But we can get rid of a times 2. How do I get rid of a times 2? Yeah, so we're going to divide this whole thing by 2 and this whole thing by 2. Now, Paisley, I know this by heart, but do you know what 3 divided by 2 is by heart? What is 2 divided by 2? 1. And then what is 1 divided by 2? 1/2. So 3 divided by 2 is 1/2.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Donna, how do we get rid of a square root? Yeah. We're going to square both sides. Squaring this right-hand side. Can you head, shoulders, knees, and toes for me, Donna? Thank you. Squaring the right-hand side will get rid of the square root altogether. So we just have an L and a 3.3. And then 1.5 squared, do not be amazed, I just did this problem yesterday, is 2.25. I just know it. All right. And then Donna, between Cole and Juliet's row, who gets to do the bingo next? All right. But don't worry, Juliet, we're going to pick Elijah first. All right, Elijah, how do I get rid of a divided by 3.3? Yeah, we're going to times both sides by 3.3. I kind of don't have room over here, so I'm writing it up here. If you want to write it on the right-hand side, times 3.3, feel free. I just don't have a marker. All right, so now, since I don't know it by heart, I am going to get my calculator out. And if you guys need to borrow a calculator, there in the back of the room. We have 2.25 times 3.3. And the length of our pendulum, our L, is equal to 7.425. I'm going to double check because it does say round to the nearest foot. So L is equal to 7 feet. You guys are going to do this problem, but instead of 3 seconds, we are going to plug in 1 second. So let me circle where we plugged in the 3. So take a moment. I'm going to give you guys like 60 seconds just in case you need to grab a calculator and to do this problem. All right, so Richard, do you want to come up and rewrite this problem, but instead of the T, rewrite it with a 1. And then, Layla, come on up and go ahead and write divided by 2. We're following the same procedure as we did in the problem before. To the nearest foot, yeah. And then, Julia, you are going to be squaring both sides. Okay, ready, Cole, and Morgan, and Diego, and Wyatt. You guys are not. If you can, I can tell you what it is. I mean, 0.2 much. But the square root is away. Beautiful. Cole, your times and everything by 3.3. You want the calculator for this? Yeah. Press harder. There. 2. Oh, you put a little mark. 2 cups. Yeah. All right, Wyatt, take us home. What is that? Round it to the nearest foot and put the units on it. Yeah, full number. And the units are? Circle it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. Radicals on both sides. What? So we are going to go ahead and square both sides. But we definitely are going to double check our answer here. So the squaring both sides, we get rid of the square root. And now we just have a solving equations problem. So Diego, what do I do first to solve this for x?
Subtract x.
Yeah, love it. 5 minus x is 4x. And then Morgan, what's my next step? Yeah, we do divide by 4. So then we plug 4 in just to make sure nothing crazy happened. If it says check your answer, yes. And it will say check for extraneous solutions. If you do not do that, I guarantee you there'll be an extraneous solution. So.
Oh, there's such thing as that?
Uh-huh. 20 minus 11 is 9. Square root of 9 equals the square root of 9. You can stop there for your check, but just because I'm a math geek, I know that root 9 is equal to 3. So 3 is equal to 3, check. Okay, you guys take about 30 seconds to do this problem here. All right, when we square both sides, we get 7x minus 4 equals 5x plus 10. Subtract 5x from both sides. 2x minus 4 equals 10. Add 2 x's to both sides. Sorry, add 4 to both sides. 2x is equal to 14, so x has to be equal to 7. And then we're just going to double check. Seven times 7 is 49. 5 times 7 is 35. 49 minus 4 is 45. 35 plus 10 is also 45. Square root of 45 is equal to the square root of 45. And all right. When you have a radical rolling around in your equation, we get everything on one side of the equation and then the radical and whoever lives in the radical prison on the other. Once we do that, we can square both sides. So in this case, we get x squared equals x plus 12. I know you guys have tried to block the last chapter from your brain, but this is a quadratic equation. Remember, we pull everything over onto one side of the equation. I'm going to try to factor this. So I'm going to subtract x and subtract 12. So I get x squared minus x minus 12 equals 0.
Yeah, you should have done that. Or can you just like take that one?
I'm not going to, because then it would make my x squared negative, and I'd have to multiply everything by -1 to get it back to positive. So in this case, keep your x squared positive. So that means everybody else has to come over and hang out with them. Unless he's negative to begin with, then you can go ahead and add him to both sides. All right, so once everything is together, oh, they're reunited like a family. We're going to do the x method to see if we can factor. I'm going to put -12 on the top and -1 on the bottom. Two factors, two numbers that multiply to give us -12 and add to give us -1. You can show me with your hands if you know. Which two numbers? Which one's negative? 4 is negative. So this factors to x minus 4 and x plus 3. I know you guys totally try to erase your memory. You went to brainwashing therapy over spring break to get rid of factoring, and I apologize for bringing it up and eliminating all that hard work you did over spring break. Once we have the answers here, or once we have it factored, the answers are each individual one set equal to 0. So this is x equals 4 and x equals -3. I have to test both of them. So we're going to ask ourselves, when I plug in 4 for x, so that's 4 equals square root 4 plus 12. Is 4 equal to the square root of 16? Yes, it is. All is good in the world. Okay. So, would it be called extraneous solutions if this was not an extraneous solution? So we plug in -3. Okay, so instead of x, we have -3. Is -3 equal to the square root of 9? Is -3 equal to 3? No way, Jose. So this is not a solution. Just x equals 4. Cross it off our list. Gavin, Marissa doesn't come back until tomorrow. Have you sit in her seat?
No.
Yes.
Okay, then head, shoulders, knees, and toes my way. It's full time. Okay, let's try this one together, and then I'll leave this guy on for y'all to do it on your own. Actually, I think we'll just do it together. So this guy, I want to solve for my square root, which means I have to get rid of my positive 6. We get rid of a positive 6 by subtracting it. So we get 10 minus 6 is 4, and the negative root 2x is left. To get rid of a negative, we multiply by -1. We can divide by -1. Do you have a preference, Cole? Do you want to divide by -1 or multiply by -1?
Multiply.
Okay. We're going to multiply both sides by -1. Let's go ahead and put that in parentheses too, so it doesn't look like we're subtracting. And we get positive root 2x equals -4. Then we're going to square both sides. And we end up with 2x is equal to 16. Divide both sides by 2. X is equal to 8. We're going to plug that back in and see if it works. So where the x is, we're going to put an 8. So we got 6 minus, what's 2 times 8? 16. Square root of 16? 4. 6 minus 4, is that equal to 10?
No.
No. No. Heck no. X is not equal to 8, and because we don't have one that works, there is actually no solution. All right. I'm going to do this one with you because there's a trickster involved. We have our square root right here. It's isolated by itself. We have our -y on the left-hand side. In order to get rid of the square root, we're going to square both sides. When you take a negative number and you square it, is it always positive? When you take a negative number and you square it, think about this. -3 times -3. Is that a positive?
Yes.
Negative 2 times negative 2, is that a positive? Negative 10 times negative 10, is that a positive? So if we're squaring a negative number, do we always get a positive? Yes, that's why I'm writing this as y squared without the negative on it. You guys okay with that? It's kind of a big boy concept to think about. So in this case, we have to get, it's a quadratic, so we have to get everything over on one side of the equation. So we get y squared minus y minus 6 equals 0. And I didn't move the y squared over because I want the y squared to be the positive one. Okay, we're going to factor this. So we have two numbers that multiply to give us negative 6 and add to give us negative 1. If you know the answer, show me with your fingers. If you don't know the answer, look around. Lance? Not the right answer.
Three and those.
Not the right answer. Two times 3 is 6.
Oh, I said one.
Negative 3 times positive 2 is negative 6.
Yes.
And negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. So we're going to factor this. So what are our answers that make this equation 0? X equals 3 and x equals negative 2. We need to plug both of those back in.
Wait, why is it negative?
If I set this equal to 0, I'm going to have to subtract 2 from both sides to give me the negative 2. Same thing here, I'm going to have to add 3. All right, so let's plug in 3 and see if we get out the right answer. Negative 3 square root of 3 plus 6. Is negative 3 equal to the square root of 9? Is negative 3 equal to 3? So this is a big no. And this is not one of our answers.
Got it.
All right, let's try the other one. Negative 2. I already have a negative hanging out in front of the y. Oops, I said y. Sorry. These are all y. I already have a negative hanging out in front of the y. The negative on this one is also going to get plugged into there. So it's negative 2. Yeah. So when you have two negatives side by side, they make a positive. Negative 2 plus 6 is 4. Is 2 equal to the square root of 4? So y equals negative 2 is our answer. Extraneous solution.